Hi, welcome to Tanya. This is class 8. Today we're going to be going through chapters 41 to 47. But as a quick review of the first 40 chapters in about 5 minutes, which is a ridiculous thing to try and do, but I'll try it anyway. So chapters 1 to 3, we said, what is a Jew? So we said chapters 1 to 3, just as a quick review, a Jew is composed of two parts, the godly soul and the animal soul. The animal soul is painfully aware of its mortality and is driven by its need to solidify its existence. That drives everything. The godly soul is the opposite. It has no fear of death, and as such, is motivated by its love and fear of God and its desire to merge with its creator. The soul is composed of an intellect and emotions, which become enclosed in garments, which are called behavior, meaning the intellect drives, creates, or the emotions, ideally, and then the emotions become enclosed within behavior. Gabriel, keep on mute. Oh, good, anyway. Okay.
I was muted, wasn't I?
I got you. You were good. Okay. We explained that Torah and mitzvahs. Mitzvahs are the behavior, so to speak, of the godly soul, which is like garments. And Torah, learning Torah, is the idea of kind of sustenance. It enters into the soul. The truth is, everything that we learn becomes part of our soul. It actually creates the body of the soul, whether it's secular, which would then add, I suppose, nourishment to the animal soul, to the human soul, and if it's godly Torah, it adds nourishment to the godly soul. We explained that there's two kinds of klipa. The klipa is the covering that allows everything to exist as we see it. Everything is energized by divine energy, but that divine energy has to be received in some kind of container. That's called a klipa. We've got two levels of klipa. We've got the gimel klipas tameus, which are so dense that they are opaque, and it's impossible, therefore, to extract the divinity that's within. That creates the world of the forbidden. Then we have the klipas noiga, which is not so dense, which means it's translucent, but although it covers, it doesn't cover utterly. That creates the realm of the permissible, which is really the realm in which the Jew is sent to this world to interact with and to elevate and to bring back, so to speak, to redeem and bring back to holiness. We've got the inner struggle then is created between this dichotomy of this desire to merge with God and become one with him, complete complete selflessness, and the contrary desire to solidify our selfhood. And that creates this dichotomy and gives rise to these three levels of Jew, so to speak. We have the tzaddik, whose emotions are completely in line with godliness, and his behavior also is obviously completely aligned with God. Then we have the rasha, whose inner world is divided. He has desires for God, godliness, and he also has strong desires for things of this world, for himself. Really, everything comes down to that, to be honest. And also his behavior is not perfect, meaning he does things that are selfish, meaning he goes against Torah V'Ratzon Hashem, and he does sins. Basically, he transgresses. And then we've got the middleman, the Beinoni, which is really who we are and what we're striving to be, he experiences the inner dichotomy of the desire for selflessness and the desire for selfishness, but at the same time, his behavior is perfect. He exercises his will and trumps his behavior and always acts in accordance with God's will. the long road to serving God is long-term meditation and learning that actually gets our emotions in line with God. And the short path is basically remembering that you would give up your life for God, so you might as well start living for him. That's basically, that's chapters 18 to 25 said very, very quickly. Then the Rebbe goes on and explains from chapters 24 to 36 that the most foundational ingredient in divine service is simcha. Simcha can be described as basically an emotional alignment or openness where emotions are flowing. Now that could also include, in a sense, avelus, mourning, but hopefully it just includes simcha, joy. But the idea of, it's not an emotion per se, but it is the health of your emotional faculties. When a person's besimcha, he will fear with deeper fear, and he will love with a deeper love. When a person is ba'atzvus in depression, the opposite of simcha, he will not fear properly and he will not love properly. We went on and explained the five stages of the heart. The heart begins in a state called tintum, where you're blocked up. Then there's a shvira, which means a disassociation, I suppose, a disidentification with your own physicality. And then there's a level of a bitterness of heart, merulas halev, which is basically a longing for change, which then leads to what's called psichas halev, which means the openness of heart, which we could also call simcha, which finally ends up at Lev Tuvav, which means, well, really, it's not a state of a heart. It's where that's why it's called Lev Tuvav, that the heart becomes the adjective, and Tuv becomes the noun, which means that's having accessed utter selflessness. That's the ultimate level of the heart, Lev Tuvav. And then we explained very quickly that Hashem desires a dwelling in the lower world, and that's why he created all the worlds, so that he can actually come into the lowest world. The lowest level of this world is the ego of the human being. And it's in that place, which is I suppose the essence of our human soul, which Hashem wants us to turn around and give back to him. And there's two analogies. It's synonymous. The concept is synonymous of bringing down Hashem into his world and returning the prince to the king. It's just looking at the same. It's looking at the same phenomena from two different sides of the same coin. Bringing Hashem down into this world and bringing ourselves up to him is the same concept.
Shmuel, why are you saying the ego is the lowest thing? Isn't the domem, the inanimate, isn't that lower?
No, not at all. The domem is actually, in a sense, the highest element of this world, because it's completely nullified to Hashem. The ego, the human ego, is the only part of creation that can turn around and say, I am God. That's really the lowest part. So that's why our entire avodah, because I said earlier that our entire avodah is in klipas noige, yeah? Which will involve all of the inanimate things and the plant life and all the kosher animals, etc. But remember that whenever you're interacting with klipas noige, with the permissible things of this world, by definition, your animal soul is engaged. So even though we're raising up, this is a very important thing to know, is that even though we're raising up all the physicality of this world, etc., in every single thing we're doing, we're really raising up the animal soul to God. That's why the Jew's animal soul comes from klipas noige. Because if it came from klipas atameus, we wouldn't be able to do it, because you can't lift that up. You understand? So that's the foundation of our entire service, is the lifting up, the fact that we've got to lift up the inanimate world and the plant world and the animal world and all that stuff. That's very important, but it pales in comparison to the true work of the Jew, which is raising up the natural soul, the animal soul, to God. And then we said basically the concept of kavanah in a mitzvah. The intention behind a mitzvah, we could call the energy that is invested into the mitzvah. And we've got basically two kinds of energies. There's the energy that is generated by intellectual, by the mind, which is the reason why, you know, political activists could be so into their cause. And then there's the latent energy of the heart, that's just the natural energy, the natural love that the animal soul has, that the godly soul has for God. That's a much lower level of energy. But either way, those are both energies that raise the mitzvah up, which we're not going to get into now. And there's also the idea of doing a mitzvah without any energy whatsoever, where the mitzvah doesn't get stuck in klipa, because there's no selfishness involved, but it doesn't go up, doesn't ascend. Okay.
Wait, one question, Ha'ara. It sounds like, based on what you're saying, that the Ikar Avoda is really in the lifting up your own klipas noga, your ego, right? So then it comes out that the mitzvah, it's not really the mitzvah that Hashem wants. Hashem doesn't really need to be revealed in the Maisa, in the domim or whatever it is you're doing mitzvah. It's really you, and just you're using that as a tool to get yourself to do Ratzon Hashem.
Well, no, not really. I suppose you could say like this: a mitzvah is composed of four. It's really three, but let's just make it simple and say 4 parts: time, space, energy, and matter. Every mitzvah, if you were to plot out or the coordinates of every mitzvah according to time, space, energy, and matter, you would have the whole Shofna Orach. That's we need. For example, you light Hanukkah candles at a certain time, yeah, Kaf Hey Kislev until Beis Tevis. The place needs to be 3 tefachim high and 10 tefachim low, etc. Yeah, the chomer, what do you call it? The material is the candle and the menorah and etc. And the energy is your nefesh bahamis. That's an ingredient in the mitzvah. So the mitzvah also needs, it's not just that, that's the primary ingredient. But all the other ingredients are also important. So we are raising up all of Klipas Noiga, but the deepest concealment of Klipas Noiga is the animal soul of the Jew. That's the deepest concealment. So that's where our energy is focused. But we're still always raising up the divine energy within the inanimate, the vegetable, and the animal also.
But it's even deeper concealed in Klipas Timaeus.
Yeah, and that is actually the tachlis of creation, is for the Yidden to bring Torah to the Goyim. That's the real tachlis of creation. Yeah, but we don't say that over here because that makes us sound not so good. I'm just joking. Okay, so we're a little bit behind now. Now, we need to define Ava and Yira. What is love and fear? Okay, but Yira, I'm not going to call Yira fear. I'm just going to call it Yira, because really it could be called fear or respect, depending on the context. So we're just going to call it Ava and Yira. Okay, Ava is translated as love. Yira, as I said, or fear or respect. Okay, basically they are movements towards and away. So Ratzon is energy. Yeah, we know the system works. Without getting too deep, there's Ratzon, then there's intellect, then there's emotions, then there's behavior. Okay, Ratzon is will. Will is just energy, pure, unbridled energy. Which way is it going? There's no definition there. There's no definition. It's given direction through the emotions. That's Ratzon. So you could have a strong Ratzon to get away from something, or you could have a strong Ratzon to come close to something. So Ava and Yira are ideally Ratzon channeled through intellect and enclosed within Ava and Yira, meaning the desire to come close or the desire to go away. It also could be described as expansiveness or contractiveness. What's the opposite of expansiveness? Contraction? Smallness. Big or small. Okay, it could be love could be called big and being big, and fear could be called small. Okay, so the foundation of all avodas Hashem is Yiras Shemayim. Yira. Why is Yira, which we could also call self-containment, the foundation? Even though earlier on in chapter 4, the Rebbe said that Yira is the shoresh, the root of all mitzvahs lo yisaseh, and Ava is the root of all mitzvahs aseh. But then he comes along in chapter 41 and says, no, really, Yira is the foundation of avodas Hashem, the entire foundation. Listen to this for unbelievable. Every relationship, the respect in a relationship is more foundational than the love. How so?
Because if you don't have respect, there's no other.
Oh, there you go. So but how does that work? That's it. You said it in a nutshell, but the mechanics of it are as follows, how I understand it. That doing something for someone can and usually does involve pleasure, your own pleasure. There is no pleasure by definition. There is no pleasure in holding back. So, for example, buying my wife flowers, which would be an act of love, can and probably would be and should be, should contain pleasure for me. There could be a very self-involved motive buying my wife flowers. However, when my wife is cold and I'm hot and she asks me to turn off the air conditioning, now that act, which is an act of yira, self-containment, that act proves that she exists in my world. And that's the foundation of a relationship. That's why yira is more foundational than love, because by yira, you are demonstrating that the other actually exists. By
so
love...
Why is there more pleasure in buying flowers than there is for turning off the air conditioner?
Because by definition, you want the air conditioning on. If you don't want it on and she asks for it to be turned off, then you're not exercising yira. But exercising yira means you're putting her needs above your needs. Ava is a very self-involved phenomenon, whereas yira is very much a concept of self-containment. She wants the mazgan off, I want it on, therefore I turn it off, basically, which would be a negative. That would be I don't do something. That would be considered an act of self-containment, of putting her reality above my reality, and that means that I'm actually in a relationship with her. And that's why yira is the foundation of all of our avodas Hashem. So now the lowest level of yira is called Kabbalah's oil, Malchus Shemayim. Kabbalah's oil is not really a yira in that it is it's a commitment. It's not an emotion, it's not a feeling, it's just a commitment. Whatever Hashem says, I'm going to do. That's the foundation of everything. It's not an actual emotion, an actual feeling. And what is it that we're here to do? We are here for one purpose only, and that is for Malchus Shemayim, which means that we are here to allow Hashem to express himself in his world. That is the purpose of the Jew. We are just a little hole, or hopefully a big hole, where Hashem can flow into his world. That's the purpose of the Jew. And that's the avoid of an Eved. An Eved, a slave, a servant, is like a person's hand. He has no agenda in and of his own right. He's just there to allow the master to express himself more fully in a way that he wouldn't without him. And but with all that said, the Rebbe says that it's also very important that we should be cognizant of the avoider of the unification of Kudsha Baruch Hu Shchinte, that we can get out of this selfish idea of serving God, because on this level what we just spoke about was I'm here to reveal God in this world, and we should be constantly trying to stay aware of the fact that it's Hashem's ratzon to merge with the Shekhinah, basically to merge with this world, and that's going to be a level of selflessness that we can implement into our mitzvahs, and that's something we should be constantly cognizant of. The Rebbe explains how we move from Kabbalah's oil to the first level of Yira. The first level of Yira is called Yira Tatar, and that's an actual experience, that's an actual feeling. Whereas Kabbalah's oil, like we said, is just a commitment. The way we transition from Kabbalah's oil to Yira Tatar is through Das, through accessing our innate Jewish consciousness of Hashem, our innate Jewish awareness of God. Once we've received on us the oil Malchus Shemayim, the yoke of heaven, once we can become cognizant of the fact that, or cognizant of our awareness, our Jewish awareness, by way of the fact that we're just Jewish, the awareness that we have of God, that means we're transitioning now into Yira Tatar. Yira Tatar, meaning the lower Yira, is on one foot a simple awareness of the presence of the Creator. I'm just aware of an eye that sees and an ear that hears. The lowest level would be, I have no concept of how great that eye is or how great that ear is, but I'm aware that I'm being watched. I have some level of what's the word? I'm cognizant of the fact that I am, at whatever degree, in the presence of God. Now, it's also called Yiras Chet. The Yira Tatar has got three words, okay? The lower Yira is called, it's got three words, three names. Yira Tatar, Yiras Chet, and Yira Chitzonius. They're synonymous, but they all refer to...
Yiras Onish also, no? Yiras Onish.
No, not at all. Yiras Onish is not a Yira. It's not a Yira. It's not it's a self-involved, it's like Ava Schar, calling that Ava. It's not that Yiras Onish, the Rebbe does not talk about Yiras Onish in any context in the Tanya. Very important to realize that. Yiras Onish, the Rebbe does say in other Maimorim that in the worst case scenario, when it's the only thing that's going to help, then you can use Yiras Onish. But it is a very, very, very bidi eved method to do the right thing. But you should know that with Nachman in Sichas Aran, I looked at today in Sichas Aran Hey, you should read that. He speaks very highly about Yiras Onish, so you have to work that out. Anyway, but the Alter Rebbe definitely isn't a fan of Yiras Onish. So it's Yira Tatar. So we can understand what it is really, really easily by knowing its three names. Yira Tatar means the lower Yira. Yiras Chet means it's the fear of sin, not the fear of punishment, the fear of sin. And Yiras Chitzonius means it's an external Yira. So Yira Tatar means it's coming from our perspective. There's me, and I'm being watched by God. I come first, and God's watching me. He's in my world, but it's my world, but he's there. Then there's Yiras Chet. Yiras Chet means that I'm scared of sinning now because, how can you sin when he's standing there watching you? One of your kids say, one of your kids says, "Abba, do you drink from, Do you drink from the bottle when you go to the fridge? You're like, no. And then he's gone away and you drink. But while he's standing there, you would never dream of drinking from the bottle in front of him, yeah? So Yiras Chet means that Kol's man, that you're aware that he's standing there watching you. How can you do a sin? Simple as that. Yiras Chetzonius is really relevant in that, what is it that you're fearful from? When you're standing in front of a king, I always give this example. You're sitting in front of Donald Trump, yeah, in the Oval Office or whatever. And he's sitting there leaning in, watching at you. Yeah? You're on your best behavior. You'd never think of picking your nose, for example. Excuse the crass analogy. If he falls asleep, then there is a chance that you might let's just say scratch your head. There's a chance that you might scratch your head, yeah? Cole's man, he's standing there watching you, you're not going to scratch your head. But once he falls asleep, there's a good chance that you're going to scratch your head. What's the difference? Because you're cognizant of his consciousness. How do you know that he's aware of you? Through his body. The body is not something that you're fearful of in any way, but it's the awareness that that body represents that is what gives you that self-containment. And that's why it's called Yiras Chetzonius, the external Yira, because you're using this world. This world is garments for the Rabbeinu Shalom. You could look at this world, so to speak, as Hashem's body, even though he has no body and no form of a body. But you could say, Kaviyachol, the way the Rebbe says it is this world is Hashem's garments. Hashem is the neshama of this world. So a yid with Yira Shema, with Yira Tatar, with Yira Chetzonius, he looks at this world in the same way, lahavdil, that you look at the body of Donald Trump. And he extrapolates from this world the consciousness of the creator who's standing here aware of him right now, just like when you see Donald Trump with his eyes open and full awareness of you, that you're aware of his watching consciousness, his awareness. And that's why it's called Yira Chetzonius, because this world is an intrinsically important part of your recognition of God. Because just like I know that I'm being watched by Mr. Trump while his body's in front of me, so too I know that I'm being watched because of the world, because of the physicality of the world. Now, the Mishnah Ava says, it actually says it differently, the opposite to the way the Rebbe says it. It says, Ein Chochma, Ein Yira, Ein Yira, Ein Chochma. But the Rebbe says, Ein Yira, Ein Chochma, Ein Chochma, Ein Yira. If there's no fear, there's no Chochma. And if there's no Chochma, there's no Yira. So the first Yira is what we just spoke about. That's Yira Tatar. And that gets you to perform mitzvahs and to not do any averas. Now, that leads to a level of Chochma. That leads to a level of, you could call it Moichin de Gadnus, expansive consciousness, whatever you want to call it. And that expansive consciousness leads to the next level of Yira, which is called Yira Ilah, the higher level of Yira. Yira Ilah has also got another two names, just like Yira Tatar has. It's also called Yiras Boishus and Yiras Pnimius. The fact that it's connected to Chochmah, the Rebbe explains that you've got Chochmah is, he gives you three kind of chazals. Koyach ma, Chochmah ayin timatze, and Chochmah roes noilad. So these three levels of Chochmah, or these three ideas of Chochmah, explain to us basically on one foot that that you are aware. Your awareness is coming from Hashem's perspective. That's what Chochmah is. Chochmah is the interface between our consciousness and God. And as such, Chochmah is more aware of God than it is this world. And that's what Yira Ilah is. If Yira Tatar means there's me and I'm being watched by God, Yira Ilah Yira Ilah, higher Yira, is there's God, and what am I doing here? Now, that comes from a total dedication into your avodas Hashem through Torah mitzvahs. And as you transition to a deeper recognition of the Ribono Shel Olam, you are ascending in levels of Yira Ilah. And that's why it's called Yir Pnimius. Why? Yir Chitzonis is referring to you are extrapolating from this world, so to speak, Hashem's body, so to speak, to Hashem. Yir Pnimius means you're starting from the other direction. You're going from the neshama of the world, which is Hashem, and now you're looking from that perspective onto the world. It's a completely different experience. And that's why it's called Yiras Boishis, which means a fear of shame. Not like a toxic shame. It's a very healthy shame. It's the shame that I've described, or the embarrassment that I described before as like when a guy is completely dressed in white and he's got like a spaghetti stain on his shirt. And everyone, you know, there's lots of analogies for that, but I never heard this one, is that how do you think the spaghetti stain feels? It's like, you know what? It's like, Tanya, to just tell you, it's like me going to Chicago for Shabbos with my Strimel in the shul. You're the only Strimel amongst like 200 guys, maybe a couple with hats, without hats, whatever. But that's the same kind of idea. It's like you feel out.
That's happening to me next Shabbos.
It's like the spaghetti stain on the white shirt. You're like looking around thinking, wow, what am I doing here? That's why it's called Yiras Boishis, because if your perspective is infinity, then like, what am I doing? What am I doing here? I'm just a little speck. Like, that doesn't make sense. I shouldn't be here. That's embarrassing. I just feel embarrassed in front of Hashem to such a degree. That's Yira Ilah. Okay. Tommy, you can turn your camera on, by the way. You're not going to go on. You're not going to go live. Where are you like?
No, I'm running around. So
no problem.
I'm just trying.
Okay, so that's Yira, the way I understand it. So Yiras Oinesh is not spoken about. That's not a Yira. That in the Zohar, that is called a Yira Ra. A Yira Ra means it's a selfish. It's the opposite of Yira. Yira is all about self-containment and being small and nothing. Yiras Oinesh is a completely different thing. It's all to do with me. So it's not called Yira. It's not Yira in the sense of the emotions of Ava and Yira. It's a completely different concept. Not that you can't use it. Not that it's obviously better to be fearful of a punishment and not do the Avela than do the Avela, obviously. But you have to be very careful with that. Now, the two loves that the Rebbe talks about. So I've spent a lot of time over the past week really getting this clear, I hope, and I think you can say it like this. The Rebbe talks about Ava Rabba and Avas Oilam. It's really kedai to try and remember these words. And then he speaks about what's called Nafshi Visicha, my soul longs, and Kabara, which is called like a son, Kabara de like a son who exerts himself after his father and mother. Ava Rabba and Ava's Oilam. So Ava Rabba is a gift from Shemayim. The Rebbe says that it's a gift that is given to somebody who is complete in his Yira Ilah. When a person comes to the highest level of Yira Ilah, then it could be that Hashem will bless this person with Ava Rabba. It's called an Ava B'Tanugim. It's a pleasure love. I'm not clear particularly on what that means. I could speak about it, but I don't feel qualified to discuss it too much. But it's when the most essential part of you, which is called your pleasure, your oineg, has been turned into godliness, and it's the love that the neshama experiences in olam haba and olam and neshamas and all that kind of stuff. But the most important thing to remember is that it's a love that's given to you. That's the most important thing to remember of this love, the way I understand it. Avos Olam, on the other hand, links in with Yirat Hatorah. Yirat Hatorah is an awareness of God through this world. Avos Olam, which means world, is exactly that. It also means eternal, but really the most helpful translation in this context is love of the world, meaning that it's through this world that you end up loving God, and in particularly understanding how good this world is. By concentrating on the goodness of this world and the pleasures of this world, and realizing and always connecting them back to the source, that will generate within you an Avos Olam. Now, it's amazing when you think about it, because really, every time you say thank you to Hashem, you are experiencing a little bit of Avos Olam. Saying thank you to Hashem basically means you're recognizing some kind of good or pleasure, it might even be a hidden good or pleasure in this world, and you're connecting it back to the Ribono Shel Olam, and that is generating within you this Avos Olam, which means a self-created love, a love that you created by yourself through your own mind. And that's how important it is to be saying thank you the whole time to the Ribono Shel Olam. It's really that is the avodah of Avos Olam. So you've got Ava Rabbah, which is a gift from God, is given to you by Hashem. You could say it's an innate kind of thing, nothing to do with you really. And then you've got Avos Olam, which is the exact opposite thing. It's you generated it yourself. Now, the Rebbe goes on and he talks about another two kinds of loves. So really, when you think about it, is Ava Rabbah and Avos Olam are ways to accessing love, in a sense. Whereas now the Rebbe speaks about these two other kinds of love called Nafshi Ivisicha, which means my soul thirsts for you, and Kabbalah, which means like a son who works for, who exerts himself for his parents. Now, Nafshi Ivisicha B'Laila, which means my soul I thirst for you at night, and Kabbalah, the Rebbe explains, have got an element of self-generated love, like Avos Olam, and a natural love, so to speak, it's not right to say natural, a godly given love that's out of your control, an innate love, that's the way to say it, an innate love, like Ava Rabbah. So they're composed of both sides, meaning that everybody has the potential for this love called Nafshi V'Sicha, every Jew, and every Jew has the potential for this love called Kabbalah. But you have to meditate on what I'm going to say in a second to actually experience these kinds of love. And this all sounds very, very theoretical and not applicable, but in a minute you'll see how it's insanely relevant, that Nafshi V'Sicha is the love that you have for your life. And everyone loves their life. Oh, but what about the people who commit suicide? We could talk about that, but I don't want to get involved in that right now. But everyone loves life. People don't like things that are bad in their life, but everyone loves life. But that isn't a love that is bigger than your life. That's a love of your life. And that will cause you to wake up in the middle of the night and exert yourself tremendously, just like any sane human being will exert himself for his life. Somebody who's lazy, who doesn't do that, is not a sane human being. There's a lot of those people. But any sane human being will be exerting himself constantly for his life. Kabbalah is the recognition that, like the son who recognizes his father is his source, he recognizes that not that God is his life, that God is the source of his life. And that is a love that includes a Mesiras Nefesh. That is a love where you realize that your beloved is bigger than your life, and that would include you giving up your life for that love. which is very intense, but it doesn't cause you to exert yourself like the love nafshi ivisicha. Just like everybody, like we said before, ask the average workaholic, would you give your life for your kids? And he would say yes. And you say to him, so why can't you just come home like and put them to bed? Why are you at work 24/7, 24/6? And he'll just be like, I got to pay for their college or something stupid like that. So even though he's aware that he would give his life for his children, it's not actually causing him to exert himself for his children. So that's similar in a sense to this level of kabbalah. It doesn't compel you to action in the same way as nafshi ivisicha does, because nafshi ivisicha is more of a selfish love, and that means that you can really exert yourself. Now listen to this. This is moedig. It's worth writing this down. Now, don't get hung up in the relationships, okay? These are just symbols for the love, okay? Ahava Rabbah is the highest level, and that's comparable. Well, say it's the highest level. I'm not going to say it's the highest level. You can argue both ways, Avas Oilam and Ava Rabbah. So let's just go. Let's say Avas Oilam. Avas Oilam is the relationship between a man and his wife. Ava Rabbah is the relate. Again, don't get caught up in, don't start plugging it into your own reality. It's what these relationships symbolize, okay? So Ava Rabbah, so Avas Oilam is represented by a man's relationship with his wife. Ava Rabbah is represented by a man's relationship with his sister. Nafshi ivisicha is symbolized by a man's relationship with his child. And kabbalah symbolizes man's relationship to his father. This is so profound. The Avas Oilam, which is like the relationship with your wife, is like fire. Okay? Ava Rabbah, which is the relationship with your sister, is like water. Nafshi ivisicha, which is a relationship with your children, is like air. And kabbalah is a relationship with your father like earth. We could discuss this for hours. It's unbelievable, mamish. But just very quickly, Avas Oilam is the bridging of a distance. A man and wife come together. She comes from Manchester, he comes from London, or she comes from New York, and he comes from California or from England, and anyway, they're man and a woman as well, but they're from different places. They grew up in different places with different, everything's different. They're very different. And that distance is causing this desire to come closer, which is a fiery love. Okay, that's a love that you have to produce yourself. If you don't exert yourself in your relationship with your wife, yeah, then nothing's going to happen. The relationship of a man with his sister is a relationship of closeness. It's always there. It's steady. It's like water. It's just steady and tranquil, and it doesn't go up and down, and it's natural. That's kabbalah. That's Ava Rabbah. That's from God. That's just innate, so to speak. Nafshi ivisicha, the selfish love, the love of my life, is the love in which we love our children with. Because our love for our children is actually a selfish love. And that's how we can see ultimately selfish people who are able to give to their children in an extraordinary way, where they can't give to anybody else in such a way. Why? Because they are vicariously giving to themselves, so to speak, for their children. Their children are an extension of themselves. So every energy that we exist in, we put into our children is, so to speak, an investment into ourself in a sense. You understand? Whereas the relationship with your parent, and this is most profoundly described by the final test of the child's relationship to his parent, which is usually nursing the parent to death. That's an utterly selfless love. That's the love of earth. Why? Well, the love of, let's just plug it in again. Why is nafshi v'sicha the love of air? Because just like air is what keeps you to live, and what you would do for your next breath of air if there was no air would be unimaginable, so too. Nafshi kabara, which is the love of a parent, the love a child has for his parent. Don't say a child, because a child doesn't have, we're talking about a man has for his father, let's call it like that, is the love of a son for his father. That is an utterly selfless love, which is most profoundly demonstrated in the nursing of the parent to death at the end of his life, where there's no benefit for the child. There's no benefit for the son. It's not like you're investing in something that's going to give you nachas or whatever. Yeah. At the end of the whole process, the parent dies and that's it. You go on with your life. That's a completely selfless love. And that's like earth. Gabriel, why is that like earth?
I don't know.
Yeah, with you. Earth is completely nullified, completely selfless. Like Malchus. Malchus is Eretz, etc. That's the reason. So those are basically the four kinds of love. You've got Ava Rabba, which is an innate love. You have Avas Oilam, which is a self-generated love. And then you have Nafshi Visicha, which is a selfish love, which is a hybrid of those two. And you have Kabara, which is a selfless love, which is a hybrid of the two. And
what's the last word you're saying?
Sorry?
What is that last thing you just said? Kabara?
Kabara means like a son. Kabara dishtado acha avyo v'imei.
And Ava Rabba is a wife?
No, Ava Rabba is like a sister, love of a
sister. That's innate. It's something. Okay, I got it.
But don't think about how you love your sister. It's just a symbol for the. It's a symbol.
Tie this together. I'm confused exactly how this all fits together. Let's keep going.
We tied it together.
What's the point of all this? Why are you telling me this?
These are the different loves. These are the different experiences of love that we have that are accessible, that we have for God. There's a love that comes from God himself. That's just by dint of the fact that we're Jewish. That's just there. That's called Ava Rabba, if Hashem decides to reveal it in us. Then there's Avas Oilam, which is the love that we should be found. We should be most engaged.
Focused on.
Yeah, focused on, which means appreciation of the things of this world, saying thank you to Rabbeinu Shalom, and constantly plugging back the pleasure of life and the pleasure of reality and the perfection of this world back to Hashem. And that will cause a love. That's the ikka love that we're involved in.
And that's the difference between Shachris of Shabbos and Shachris of weekday. Weekday is a Havas Olam that you have to generate, and Shabbos is a gift from Hashem.
Just like eating on Shabbos and eating on the Chol. There's two reasons why we eat. One is for energy, one is for pleasure. By definition, when we eat for energy, that's a means to an end. Eating for pleasure is an end to itself. So the entire avodah of the Chol, that's the reason why it's called malacha, because the malachas are all processes. One leads to the next. They're all means to an end. That's why malacha is the word malach, from an angel, because an angel is a means to an end, unlike a neshama, which is an end in itself. That's why we say nishmas on Shabbos. So Shabbos is always end. That's why it's called tachlis hashemayim va'aretz. It's an end unto itself. So we eat for pleasure on Shabbos. Whereas in the Chol, we don't eat for pleasure at all. We eat for energy, which is the whole, anyway. Yeah. So. And
then the last two, just say the last two in relation to Hashem.
So nafshi v'sicha means we love God in the way that we love our life. That gets us up in the middle of the night. It's that love that causes you to do insane things for Hashem, or should cause you to do insane.
And that's not innate, or it is innate?
It's innate, but you have to juice it up. You have to catalyze it by remembering.
You have to open it up. You have to reveal it.
Exactly. Yeah. Exactly.
That's the Ava Mitzvah Shebelev, or
that's basically. But it's the revelation of that. It's the revelation of that on a. It's not. It's a certain kind of love in the heart.
It's a Hava Rabbah that's juiced up.
No, yeah. Well, the Ava Rabba is referring to the fact that it's latent in your heart. It's just there. So the energy of using your mind to remember how much you love life, just being grateful for life, that's just keeping your fixation on how much you love life and how much you're prepared to exert yourself for life. That is the experience of nafshi ivisicha b'layla, and that is where most of your avoda comes from. That's the love that energizes the majority of your avodas Hashem. That's the kind of thing that can get you up in the middle of the night. I
thought we just said Ahavas Olam was that which you think about, being thankful for all the things. You're saying this is for your life, not for the things in your life.
That's what, so exactly that, that's the reason why I said that Avas Olam and Ava Rabba are more like drochim, ways to get to the love, and in the loves nafshi v'sicha and kabbalah is a little more helpful. But that's a bit of a chiddush. People don't talk of it like that. People talk about these four loves, where nafshi v'sicha is like a hybrid and kabbalah is like a hybrid of Ava Rabba and Avas Olam. But those
just say what kabbalah is. Just say what kabbalah is in a relationship to Hashem, like you just.
Kabbalah means that you recognize that Hashem is the source of your life and that you're a bottle within Him, that your life is in context of Him, that you recognize Him as the source of your life, and that is the love that will allow you to give up your life for God. Nafshi v'sicha, even though you could give up your life like you could give up your life for your children, you wouldn't really be giving up your life. Like we explained, that's not true Mesiras Nefesh. That's like the Mesiras Nefesh of Jeff for Pinky the Whale. That's not real Mesiras Nefesh. But Kabbalah,
your kid is you. Your kid is an extension of you.
Exactly. So you're giving yourself up for you, which is really self-preservation. So even though it looks like you're giving up your life for your child, you're not really. You're investing into your life. That's what your avodah for your child is. Don't think you're a big tzaddik because you're a good dad. You can think yourself as a good big tzaddik when you're a good husband, but when you're a good dad, that just makes sense. That's just being normal. That's just being healthy. Okay, we're a little bit behind time, but I just want to try and get these few last things done. The Rebbe goes on and explains another way. It's not really a love, it's a way of accessing and whatever without getting into which love it accesses, but this is a very important idea, is compassion. Rachmanus is a tremendous segula. How do you say segula?
Inherent.
It means like a segula means like
charm.
A trick. It's like it's a great. It's not the right word, but it means it's like a great way to what's the word? To reveal love. If you hate someone and you have compassion on them, there's a good chance that it will help you love them. Compassion, or Rahmanas, let's call it Rahmanas, could also be translated as empathy. What's the difference between sympathy and empathy? Gabriel, you have an answer for that?
Sympathy is where you feel bad for the other person. Empathy is where you feel the other person.
So basically, the way I understand it is basically they were saying sympathy is about me. If I was in your position, I would feel terrible. Therefore, I have sympathy for you. It's really all about me, and I'm extrapolating from me to you. Empathy is actually forgetting about me and entering into you. That's Rahmanas. And that is the ultimate segula. I don't know about the ultimate, it's an amazing segula for revealing love. Having compassion on your child will help you love them. And the Rebbe explains that having compassion on the fact that your godly soul basically says have Rahmanas on God, in that your godly soul is being dragged through the mud and all the bad stuff that you're doing, and the fact that you're just embodied as a human being and caught up in self-identification, which is completely false, and complete falsehood without even getting involved in Averas and stuff. Have Rahmanas on your godly soul, and that will generate a love. That chapter think it's 45 in Tanya, is like it's like a poem. It's like the most profound meditation if you read it slowly, and it's just the most beautiful meditation. It's so special. And then we've got a couple more minutes to explain another kind of love. It's not really a love, it's really again another way of accessing love, which is called the reciprocal love. Just as the pasuk says that, like water, when you look in water, your same face gets reflected back to you. The Rebbe explains that naturally the way the world works is that your heart reflects back the emotion that the other person is feeling towards you. Can you override that? Yeah. But if you're running on the default factory settings of who you are, then it should be that when someone loves you, you will love them back. Now, this is basically true in any case, but when the person who loves you is a very high person or a very big person, and you're a very lowly person, then that love will be even more intense. Just like the Rebbe gives the analogy of a big king picking up a lowly pauper and taking him into the palace and kissing him and hugging him, taking him into the most inner chambers, etc. And the love that pauper will feel to the king, he said, is comparable to the fact that Hashem came and pulled us out of Mitzvah, out of Egypt, when we were in the lowest state, and he spent some time explaining how high God is, which is quite helpful. And then what it means that God gave us Torah mitzvahs, which is like being invited into the innermost chambers of Hashem and actually coming into a marital bond with Hashem himself. And that's the idea of Yetzias Mitzrayim. And he says that the time that Chazal gave us to meditate on this love is Kriya Shema. Kriya Shema is being Makabel Oil Malchus Shemayim, which is basically the declaration that I want to be merged with Hashem, that Hashem is reality, and I'm just a detail in his reality. And as such, they shipped in Yetzias Mitzrayim into Kriya Shema, because that's the same idea. Yetzias Mitzrayim on a personal level means you're coming out of your identification with self. That's called being bound up in the chains. It's called Melech Asor B'Rehitim, which means the king is bound up in chains. That means, and it says in the Zohar, Rehitem Moicha, which means the chains of the mind, which means the human being has become identified with his human persona. And Kriya Shema is the breaking free of that, remembering that you're a detail in his reality as well, which is Yetzias Mitzrayim, which is the releasing of the soul, the godly soul, from its identification with its human counterpart, as opposed to remembering that you're a godly soul in this world, having a human experience, as opposed to a human in this world with a neshama. What I just did there was the most terrible reduction of what we should sit and spend dozens and dozens of hours learning. But again, like I've said over and over, this thing, what I'm doing right now, is just to try and kind of spark in you a commitment to actually take this on as your own personal project, because no one can give you Tanya. There's only one person who can give you Tanya, and that's you. Well, you don't even give it to yourself. You just have to decide that you want it. And then you're like they said, Rav Noach Weinberg said, Zatzal, go around the yeshiva, any yeshiva, and ask all the bochum, you want to learn all of Shas? Every single bocher will say yes. But then you see the one guy at the front of the yeshiva who's there 24/7 learning Shas. What's the difference in him and everyone else? He really wants to learn Shas. The other guys just say they want to learn Shas. If a person really wants something, he goes and does it. That's all I'm trying to do now. I'm just trying to spark this ratzon that you want to take. This is the greatest pleasure in my life, literally, is my relationship to Sefer Tanya. Okay.